Good morning, everybody. It's Laurie White back again with episode number 85 of Chamber TV. And we are excited today to talk about an issue that a lot of folks have really are concerned about. Corporations are addressing the issue very aggressively. And it's an issue that we all need to learn a little bit more about and the nuances and the business imperative behind it. And the issue is corporate social responsibility, otherwise known as ESG, which we can layer onto that topic. And our guest is an expert on that issue, and she's joining us today. Welcome, Elizabeth Shanley from the Fehlig Group.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So the Fehlig Group has offices in Providence and Maryland. And the Fehlig Group is a subject matter expert in all things CSR. So we're really excited, Elizabeth, to hear a little bit more about your current day perspective on this issue and what we as business leaders might do more aggressively and more purposefully to have a better performance, a better profile in CSR.
Great. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to talking about this today. I'm sure people don't even realize that they're already doing a lot in this space.
Fantastic. So I will turn it over to you to take us through your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. If you're here to learn about how to prepare for the big questions coming from your large customers, or maybe understand why these questions are being asked in the first place, or you just want to know how you can start your own sustainability journey, then you're in the right place. This webinar is going to be diving into what you're doing today to be a responsible business. How are you leveraging these practices to position yourself ahead of your competitors? So we're going to uncover a plan. Let's see what you already have in place, and then let's build on it. You could call this course Sustainability 101, but I didn't want to scare anyone away. Or you could call it Becoming the Business You Need to Be in Troubling Times, because we're talking about pivoting and evolving. Either way, let's get ahead of your competition, sustain your bottom line, engage your employees, and be the forward-thinking organization that I know you can be. You've joined me today to learn about how to show up in this new normal. We're going to focus on the reasons why making some sustainable changes could transform your business. And as I said, get you ahead of your competitors. I'm Elizabeth Shanley, as Laurie introduced me. And although I've only been part of the Fehlig Group for a short 3 years, I was raised in a household that supported businesses that gave back. I heard and understood the terms community engagement and philanthropy before I knew how to ride a bike. Next slide, please. And in this short time, I don't want to talk too much about who we are, because you can check out our website. You can see our clients and our services and everything. But we are impact advisors. That's what we call ourselves. We're consultants. We are business development managers, writers, graphic designers. We're small business gurus, corporate America rock stars, and our portfolio ranges in industry as well as business size. Our principal, Mary Fehlig, has been in this field for 27 years. She has coached, consulted, she's educated, but most importantly, we like to say that she's been listening. Next slide. We all have, really. We've been listening to our clients, our Fortune 500, our publicly traded clients. They're asking us for guidance on how to educate their suppliers around how to continue to do business with them. And we've listened to small suppliers worry about losing their biggest accounts because they can't keep up with the questions being asked of them around the environment, their philanthropy efforts, their diversity. And these questions are now coming from procurement offices. So we're hearing this unease on both sides, the customer and the supplier. And that's what brings us here today. And when I talk about supplier, I don't just mean everyone's kind of a customer and a supplier in some sense. So I'm not just saying you're a manufacturer providing something to a large corporation. I know in this world that we live in, everybody's working together, and we're trying to make that language connect. So what we're talking about isn't speculation in this sustainability field. It's not just the right thing to do. This is a problem in the business world as customers and investors are now demanding that big corporations step up and be a good business. Okay, but the missing link is that these businesses are not only responsible for what is happening inside their walls, they are expected to cascade their expectations to all their suppliers. So this requires a new type of conversation between buyer and supplier, and a new set of opportunities for suppliers that are listening in today, like you. So big companies are now asking their suppliers, how are they being a responsible business? How would you answer that question? Next slide, please. When you have an opportunity to talk about what you do you make it a priority to talk about who you are? What are some descriptors that come to mind? These are basic, so I don't need you don't have to answer right now, but I would like you to be thinking about this. You know, if you're given an elevator pitch or somebody asks you, what do you do? Just think about how you respond to that. Next slide, please. All right, so I said this wasn't speculation. And how do I know this is happening? Well, other than I mentioned, we're hearing it ourselves. Also, in August of 2019, which, believe it or not, was only last year, 181 CEOs signed a document that talks about working with organizations that are being sustainable. I'm not going to read you this whole quote, but I wanted you to have quick access to see that big businesses are talking about this. And if you want the sources or anything that I talk about today, I will gladly send whatever you're interested in learning more about. When this Business Roundtable was created in the 1970s, its focus was on driving value to shareholders. And now it's about creating purpose. It's interesting how times have changed. So here are some key takeaways from the Business Roundtable. This is what they are saying they aim to do. Next slide. And I'm quoting directly from them. Investing in our employees. This starts with compensating them fairly and providing important benefits, including supporting them through training and education. We foster diversity and inclusion, dignity, and respect. They talk about dealing fairly and ethically with our suppliers. We are dedicated to serving as good partners to other companies, large and small, that help us meet our mission. Supporting communities in which we work. We respect the people in our communities and protect the environment by embracing sustainable practices across our business. So if you saw any of those companies on the previous slide that you might one day be interested in working with, they are saying that they care about these things. Next slide, please. What gets confusing is the terms that are showing up in the business world. Because you've got big companies like CVS, has a corporate social responsibility, also called CSR team. You've got Marriott, they call it social impact. Another organization may have a sustainability lead. There's typically a philanthropic division in larger organizations, or I guess small ones too, because it depends on where your values are. And in smaller businesses, it could just be an office manager that handles all of this. But all of these words, they mean the same thing. Next slide, please. Some businesses, they get frustrated or consider you outdated if you're using the wrong word. But I'm here to tell you to try not to let the changing terminology get in the way. It boils down to doing good. Big businesses want to know about it. And it means that you care and you're actively doing things in your organization to improve the lives of your employees, support your community, protect the planet. But it doesn't mean sacrificing profit. And that's why we didn't call this Sustainability 101, because it's a phrase that people get nervous around because they think that it's something that takes away from their bottom line, when in reality, we're adding to it. Next slide, please. So Laurie mentioned the phrase ES&G, And this has been coming up more and more due to interest from investors. ESG stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. And it refers to the three central factors in measuring the sustainability and societal impact of an investment in a company or business. So these criteria help better determine the future financial performance of a company and their risk to investors. Next slide, please. And it's rising quickly. Assets under management in funds abide by ESG principles have surpassed $1 trillion for the first time on record. Financial service companies have published annual reports that extensively review their ESG approaches and bottom lines. And now, this disruption caused by COVID has highlighted the importance of building sustainable and resilient business models based on multi-stakeholder considerations. When I am out talking to these big businesses, they're saying that their investors are putting this pressure on them because investors are spending money with environmental, social governance portfolios. So they're spending the money to work with these businesses that care about that. Well, therefore, these publicly traded companies need to step up. What happened during COVID is that they realized that their supply chains were riskier. And so now they're diving in even deeper to make sure that they're paying attention to their own environmental social governance initiatives. So here's an example. I apologize, I skipped ahead to this next slide a little too quickly, but here's an example. So we're talking to a supplier right now, and they are hiring us because they want to know how do they get their suppliers more engaged in initiatives that support their targets. So they're saying, hey, we want to continue working with these suppliers. We, big publicly traded company, want to continue working with these suppliers, but they aren't communicating the information that we need. They don't know how to track their greenhouse gas emissions. They're not paying attention to the pay discrepancies. They're not talking about their philanthropic efforts. If we want to keep working with them, big companies are saying to us, we need them to start talking about this. And on the other side, the suppliers are saying, we're not being asked yet for that information. But the procurement teams are now starting to ask. We know because they're asking us to help put together trainings and courses for their procurement teams to then educate their suppliers. Next slide, please. So, are you a responsible business? The answer is yes. Okay, here's how I get there. Let's prepare for the future. With 27 years of experience in this field, we can recognize what questions are being asked and how businesses can prepare for them, which is why we're here. As I've said, the growing trend is the importance of fostering and reporting responsible initiatives. This is directly tied to future funding and procurement opportunities for your business. The question itself, are you a responsible business, might seem overwhelming, and you might be quick to have an answer, but we're going to look at different areas to help you answer that question. Because we know if you haven't been asked already, it's only a matter of time before this gets to your business if you do business with these large corporations. And we're saying that the good news is that we're pretty confident that you're already doing some of these things. It's never happened that we've gone into work with an organization and they aren't doing anything. It's typical that most companies we work with have incorporated several responsible practices. They just don't know to name it that. And therefore, if you don't know to name it that, you don't know how important it is to communicate it to your customers. So we're going to show a lens to look at your existing responsible practices so you can identify areas of growth around how you can leverage these practices to define your platform. So we started, this first bit of the presentation is education about why it's important. It's coming from all these different angles. So my hope is that by this point, you have a sense of understanding the why it's important. Now we're going to get into how do we implement this into your organizations and identify areas where you might already be doing something already. Next slide, please. There are 100 ways in which you could start this process, and it's going to look different for every company, even in the same industry. the goal is for this to be a dynamic initiative for your company that can be agile with the ever-changing landscape of business and social demands. So we're going to give you some ideas, but this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. Next slide. We've identified that there is demand on your customers. It's time to start thinking about how you are showing up in your bids and as a business partner to help these customers reach their goals. As I mentioned, most likely you're probably doing something already. So if you look at this slide up here now, are you doing any of these things? Think about how you treat your employees. Do you have a supplier diversity program? Is that something that you're thinking about, especially now? So maybe you can say you're doing even more than one. And these are just some examples of what's considered a responsible business practice. And I want to go back to the fact that this is not a one-size-fits-all. It's also not an all or nothing. You can do one or two of these things really, really well and feel successful. This isn't check all of the boxes kind of a situation. I'm going to do a quick pulse check. You don't have to respond to you don't have to respond to me, but I would like you to I want to make sure everyone's okay with everything we've been talking about so far. If you're thinking, okay, so maybe I do one or more of these things, so what? Or maybe you're thinking, we're not doing any of that, now what? Both of those reactions are very, very normal. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at what your journey could look like. Next slide, please. So here are some things to start thinking about. And this is something that when we work with an organization, this is sort of a general idea of how we walk through this journey. The first thing to do is to figure out who is involved in this process. So where's the commitment? Is it the CEO? Is it a newly implemented sustainability team? Is it an overzealous employee that knows this is important, just wants to be the one to run with it? Who's going to be leading the charge? That is a huge component of this, because if it's just this idea, then it's really hard to get anything done. Then we go to policy. So what sorts of policies do you already have in place? Do you have a code of ethics for your own suppliers? What sort of things are you tracking and what can be amended? Then you've got management system. This can be a tool to help track and delegate responsibilities. So in some spaces, there's environmental management systems, which is basically saying, we are going to track water and waste and carbon, and we're saying that we're going to reduce. Well, that's the next step. We're going to set targets and we're going to reduce these targets. And in the management system, you're also going to be talking about who's going to be responsible for that. Is HR going to be tracking water? Probably not. It's probably going to be somebody in operations, or maybe it's somebody in accounting. But the management system helps you put sort of a plan in place that's a working document that you're going to be paying attention to year over year to show improvement. And that's where you're going to put in your targets. And this is where areas where you can improve. And we always say start small. You're not going in there saying we're going to be, carbon neutral by the end of next year. Some of those goals, there's no need to set them crazy high. It's just incremental. Start small. Pick meaningful, actionable targets. Then we talk about engagement, making sure that your teams, your employees, your customers, and your suppliers are aware of all of this work you're doing. You want to get them on board by asking for their feedback. And you're asking for their feedback. You're not demanding they change. You're not saying, we've decided these things, now do it. It's, how do you think we can get to our common goal? And you can use that slide that we had just before as a starting place to identify areas where you can improve and things you can implement. But make sure you get your teams involved. And you definitely want to talk to your customers. So if you have big businesses as your customers, find out, what do they care about? Then we're going to get to performance, and you want to celebrate success. As I said, I want you to walk away today feeling like you're already doing something, because it feels good to know you're moving in the right direction. You want all of your stakeholders to feel that as well. And then evaluate what worked and what didn't, so you can share best practices and so that you can improve, of course. Next slide. When I talk about engaging your customers, well, as you go on this journey, you're going to want to keep in mind this term materiality. And this falls under engagement on the journey, because this is what you are asking your customers. It basically means what matters to those who matter to you. That's what materiality means. Sometimes you can easily learn about an organization's materiality by scanning their website. They'll have like a tab, sustainability or CSR, or you could ask them directly, as I had just said. You want to find out where's their focus. Where's their target area? Is it water reduction? Is it energy reduction? Is it diversity? Is it, being a great place to work? Understanding their goals may help give you a starting place to create your own goals and objectives. Now, this isn't saying go ask your customers, find out what's important to them, change your identity just to make them happy. But by having that conversation, it can be used as a guide to help you if you're just getting started. And then if it helps fill both your needs, well, then that's, that would be amazing. But it's also important to understand what's expected of you when you're talking to your customers. You want to know, what can you impact? You want to help them reach their targets, but what's really in your scope that you can manage? And you want to know this before you bid so that you can come in educated and, come in with maybe some ideas. You could ask your long-term customers so that they can continue to see you as a partner helping them reach their goals. So this isn't just for new business. I've spent a lot of time talking about customers and how important sustainability is when you want to get ahead of your competition and, make your customers happy. And the 100% they matter. But the good news is there's even more benefits than just keeping and getting new customers when you start implementing and improving on responsible business practices. Next slide, please. So we've talked about customers. Well, your customers are hiring companies that have values in alignment with their own and will help them meet their sometimes lofty targets. Then we go to employees. Your employees are looking for meaning-making opportunities while at work, and you are creating this space for them. I was giving a presentation at a hotel leadership summit, and I gave this example, and it resonated, so I'm going to mention it. I said, do you want to be the hotel that has these beautiful trophies sitting in a case in the lobby collecting dust that say, we're a green business? Wonderful. Got the trophies. They're over there. Or do you want your customers, and this is B2C, do you want your customers to know that you're a green business because they run into a housekeeper in the elevator, see that she's wearing a green lapel, and say, what is that green lapel? And then her response is, my company has won the greenest building in the city 3 years in a row, and I'm proud to work for an organization that cares about a planet that's going to be livable for my grandchildren. That's the difference. If you're doing it to get the trophy to put in the case to collect dust, it's still a good thing to do because you're doing something right for the planet. But why not leverage that work that you put in to get that award, engage your employees, tell them why you did it, tell them that they were a part of it, engage them and give them that gift of feeling that sense of pride to work for the organization. So that's what I mean when I talk about engaging your employees. Yes, it's taking them through this process with you and asking for feedback, but it's also giving them that opportunity to feel that shared sense of pride. All right, so we'll go back to the benefits. More benefits to being a sustainable business. Your brand image could be transformed. I mean, if you're the first one or one of the first ones to start a certain initiative, leverage that. You could be the first in your city or the first on your block, the first in your industry. Just do something now so you can show up as a leader in this space as it grows. And then communities. Communities are aligning themselves with value-driven organizations. And if you have B2B and B2C customers, then your reputation in your community matters even more. And then if you wish to sell your business, well, I mean, we're not a financial company, but you can bet we've had several conversations with financial professionals telling us that the valuation of an organization could be higher since risk is mitigated when responsible business practices are in place. So it's not just about placating or helping your customers get to these targets that they're setting for themselves, which are great that they're doing that. But there's so much other value in becoming a responsible business. And it's now, that's, as I keep saying, it's now showing up in the RFP process. Next slide, please. So I touched on this slide very, very quickly, and I want to go back to it because, when you think about what you do, start thinking of ways you can add to who you are. And start thinking outside the box and things that you might not consider a responsible practice. Reach out to me, say, hey, is this considered a responsible practice? And let's have a conversation about it. Think about who you are as a brand and as an organization. And as I said before, big businesses know what you do. Tell them who you are. Next slide. We want you to be proud of what you're doing because there's no more self-aggrandizing in this space. And if you aren't talking about it, it's as if you're not doing it. And you're missing out on a whole lot of opportunities in that sense because employees is a big one right now because it's this huge shift. And over the next couple years, a lot of people are transitioning from one industry to another industry. And if you can get your employees on board with this work, if you're about to undertake this or you want to enhance your efforts, then your current employees could be your brand ambassadors out there in this space and say, hey, I work for a company that does X, Y, and Z, and I'm proud to work for this organization, as opposed to I go to work and I get my paycheck and I do my job and I'm proud of the brand, but we could be doing more. Next slide, please. I keep saying this is happening. It's not if, it is when. And I would love to continue this conversation. I'd love to know where you are on your journey, or brainstorm ideas that could help you get started. We work with businesses of all sizes, from small single property chocolatiers to international biopharmaceutical companies. And we kind of, fill the gap. I had a prospect say to me recently, oh, so you can snorkel or deep dive. And it's exactly. If you aren't ready to connect, but you want to keep learning about how to be a purposeful organization, I hope you'll follow us on social media. But my hope is that I want you to walk away understanding that it's okay to ask your customers about their sustainability goals. And in fact, I hope that you will. It's only going to benefit you if you ask. And I hope you feel you have practices in place to help you get started on your journey. Next slide. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was great. So we're chatting with Elizabeth Shanley, who is area manager with the Fehlig Group, and they have offices in Providence and in Maryland. And they are a proud member of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. So we are very glad that you have determined that the Chamber, as a responsible community partner, is an organization with whom we can continue to have these discussions around. So we are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, we are live on YouTube right now. So we want to hear from you, and you can put your questions in the chat box and let us know what you're thinking of and ways that perhaps you are thinking to get started with this whole journey around corporate social responsibility and ESG. So I'll start the questioning off. And again, I really want to hear from all of you, as I know Elizabeth does as well. But one of the things, Elizabeth, that you mentioned around the ESG, environmental, social, and governance, is the sustainability and governance, the notion of governance. And we kind of sort of skipped over a little bit in terms of what is meant today around governance. And you could explain, if you will, the notion of, members of diverse communities serving on that organization's board of directors and in high profile roles. So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into that aspect of it, because if you do look at Morningstar and a lot of the other analyst groups, companies, publicly held companies, are now being graded on the degree to which their governance structure is diverse.
Yes, so governance is about transparency. So it's having, diverse boards in terms of, race, gender, it's disabilities. So it's about diversity, but it's also about transparency. Is the board, are our senior leadership involved in are employees involved in the conversations that senior leadership is normally the ones that are involved in? So pay discrepancies, or how is the company doing this year? The annual report goes out to investors, but employees, how are they aware? Are they familiar with how their company is doing that year? Or, we're talking a lot about organizations that are taking, these CEOs that are taking pay cuts or not taking pay at all in 2020. And that transparency, as well as the transparency in your supply chain and being able to say, we're paying attention to these things. That's governance. It's the leadership level. And how are you paying attention? How are your employees aware of what's going on at the senior leadership level?
Perfect. So I know that you've done a lot of analysis and tracking on these matters, these subjects, and I see all the books that you have behind you that no doubt are really inspirational pieces of literature. But tell us what progress we've made as a society, as a community, as a business community in the last 12 months, as an example, not necessarily because of COVID, but despite COVID, to starting to achieve some real traction and impact.
I can tell you that over the past 27 years, now, as I said, I've been with the organization for 3 years, but over the past 27 years, our founder has been watching the subject du jour change. It's environment for a couple years, it's diversity for a couple of years, it's community engagement and philanthropic efforts, and then it's cyclical and it comes back and it kind of ebbs and flows and changes. And I think what's really unique about 2020 is that it's everything. And not only is it everything, people are reacting to it. And this is actually one of the first times that I've, the past 2 years, I would be going out to networking events and I would be speaking with individuals and telling them about what I do. And, there's a lot of blank stares. And now I'm going to these events and these big corporations are saying, oh my gosh, yes, we're noticing this in all of these different places. Yes, we need to do risk analysis with our supply chain. Yes, we need to put our words into action. We have these robust sustainability reports, but now we need to put it into action and we need to hold our suppliers accountable. So I think that's what's really exciting about this year is not only that people are purchasing towards towards companies that values are in alignment with their own, they're being held accountable, these big businesses, but also all of these initiatives that were sort of year by year, the most important topic, it's now all the most important topic, which I think says a lot about our society. It's saying, okay, we can't just pick one anymore. We have to figure out how do we manage all of this. And there are tools out there. It's not a conflict to us that there's a lot of tools out there to help you get started. There's B Corp certification, which is relatively new. EcoVadis has over 70,000 members now, and it's a really big deal. So EcoVadis is a tool that you can use that gives you a rating. And big companies will say, go get an EcoVadis rating. And if you get this certain rating, then we can continue to work with you. If you don't have that rating, well, then you might hire a company like the Fehlig Group to help get you up to that certain rating. Or they say, you need to have an environmental management system in place, and we could go in and say, let's help put that into action. And then tools like B Corp. Well, B Corp is a certification, and it's saying that you're a benefit corporation, but there's also a certification component of that, which is really exciting that these things exist. And that certification component takes you through your environmental social governance, how you treat your employees, what's your relationship with your community. It takes you through these different questions, and you have to get a certain score. And then when you get that score, you can become a B Corp member. Right now it's, it's Ben & Jerry's and it's Patagonia, but it's worth checking out both of those things, because if you still feel like you don't know where to start on this journey, you can use those kinds of tools to help you get started, to figure out what questions should I even be asking, and then fill in the gaps as you go. Okay, well, we do really well in the environment, but we don't really have a great community presence, so maybe we should put a little more of our resources towards that. But the fact that everything is important today, and there's all these tools and resources at our fingertips, I think says a lot about the direction that we're going.
Yeah, I love that. So let me just build on the B Corp certification. The Chamber partnered with Social Enterprise Greenhouse last year. Kelly Ramirez, if folks aren't familiar with Social Enterprise Greenhouse, get in touch with Kelly, get in touch with Elizabeth. But yeah, the B Corp certification has a lot of really interesting ways that to amplify what you said, Elizabeth, to start to really understand what folks can do as a first step, a second step, a third step, to be known as a socially responsible enterprise. And the idea of certification, there are things that you can do along the way, along the journey, to continue to try to earn that certification. So it's something fairly new out there, but it's a great resource to turn to, in addition to what you were saying, Elizabeth, to learn about some of the other ways that people can begin to understand this movement. So you mentioned tools, you mentioned B Corp. What other tools, fast track tools, do you have anything on your website at the Fehlig Group that folks can download and get their minds starting to churn on this?
We don't on our website because it's so expansive. It really depends on your industry as well as where you are geographically. So, but even something like, Rhode Island Monthly and Rhode Island Foundation, then they do the Common Good Awards. So things like that, if you wanted to do your becoming a green business, a county recognized green business certification. So a lot of times there's these awards that you can apply for or certifications that you can apply for. And those are good starting places because it just gets you thinking about things differently. And even if you're doing small things, it gets the ideas start flowing. And then you realize, oh, okay, so in order for us to get this next year, then we have to set a baseline so that we can show improvement the following year. And that is the baby step. And so that depends on wherever you are and whatever industry you're in. You could talk to your industry association or find out, if there's a green certification that you're interested in kind of going towards. And then it's, making sure you're leveraging that for all those other things that we've already talked about. But that is how we recommend getting started if you want to just continue thinking about this. It's thinking about awards and local certifications. If you want to go, B Corp certification and EcoVadis or, becoming a great place to work, those are great as well. They're a little bit more robust. But any sort of certifications is a good starting place.
Can you give us a couple of examples of water management tips and ideas? You mentioned that a minute ago. In terms of, water, people don't realize because we're in this part of the country, but, in California and parts of Arizona and Nevada, it's such a precious commodity. And there's actually taxation on over usage of water. What can people do in their own residences, and what can companies do to really appreciate the sustainability and the preciousness of our water supply.
Sure. Well, sometimes there's the fun things to do with kids, if you're taking a shower, and make sure if you put a bucket in there and then use the bucket to go water your plants, or, there's things like that, turning off the water when you're brushing your teeth. In organizations, there's low flow faucets that your operations teams can look into, or you as leadership could look into. And there's toilets that have options. It seems it's very European to have the 2 flush options, but that saves a lot of water. And the big conversation is with your accounting department. So the person looking at your bills, because that's where you're going to see the difference. Putting up fun incentives for your employees to say, hey, let's see if we can reduce our water by X amount by the end of the year, and make it a team initiative, so that when you get there, whether you decide you want to do some sort of celebration or you just feel proud that you made this big change, again, you can show the baseline, show the reduction, but you're going to be really paying attention to your bill is what's going to be the big differentiator.
Yeah, another example of ways that companies can do team building exercises, or, do 2 things for one objective. What about on the energy saving?
Energy savings, there's, solar panels, Energy Star, there's different websites. There's, for energy saving, it's the lights, having the motion censored lights is a big one, and having the just the Energy Star appliances too is a big one that B Corp sort of recommends. And even they sort of have, their little checklist of sort of small little things that you can do, but it's watching your bills. It's paying attention to turning off lights when you leave the room, unplugging your computer at the end of the day, not just closing it or even turning it off, but unplugging it out of the walls. So it's just small things like that if you are working for if you're in an organization and every single person pays attention to that, then, not running the dishwasher if you have a dishwasher at your office, using the mugs and cleaning it out yourself is another one. And that's something though. So we've had these ideas about employee engagement with these different things, is have somebody that's your engage or your green champion going around your organization, and maybe you get a little green star or a little green frog for your desk because somebody noticed you brought in a mug from work today, so you get the green frog because you are doing something that is reducing energy and you're not collecting waste in our landfill, so you get the little green frog today. And then maybe the next day that person sees that you brought in a reusable straw, or maybe that person saw that you turned off the lights and unplugged your computer when you left the night before. And it's a fun way to recognize each other for things that we should be doing already, but we're not. And it's a little harder now that we're not all in the office, but if you can start putting together some of these ideas, then when people come back to the office, they can see, whoa, they were doing something while I was gone, and this is a culture I want to be part of, and things are different here now, and I want to be part of this.
Sure. What about the emphasis on doing business with small business?
Yes, local economic development is a huge part of being a sustainable business, and there's supplier and diversity teams for all these big organizations. So being a small business is beneficial. So making sure that, trying to get certified as a small business or registered as a small business, and then making sure that you're talking about it, because you might think that people assume that they already know that, but talking about it, being proud, I'm a small business and I'm contributing. But yes, it's a responsible practice to be talking about.
So what do you mean get registered as a small business?
Well, so you can be making sure that you're putting like SBE, small business enterprise, when you're filling out like different RFPs, because sometimes it's overlooked because people don't think they think, oh, well, if I'm not a woman-owned business or I'm not a diverse supplier, then they just sort of skip past that part. And so it's making sure it's just one little spot that you can put it in. But if you check drop-down tabs for some of these big corporations, pay attention to that if you're a small business.
Interesting. So how would that be described? What is the definition in order to be officially known as a SBE?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so it's probably, the SBA definition of it is companies under or fewer than 500 people, but I'm guessing for the purposes of this that the threshold is much lower.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay, well, we can definitely look into that, and
searchable.
Put that in the show notes for sure, to let people know exactly. What is the most common question you get from potential clients and clients?
The most common question, it's usually about what should our targets be, because we talk a lot about showing improvement. So they'll say, well, what should we set our targets as? What do you think our target should be? And that's always, we never get to give the response that people want to hear, because they want to hear, if you're in manufacturing, you should set a 5% target for water reduction, or you should set a 5% target for energy reduction. I think I said solar panels before, but I just want to make sure that I say that again. So we say, start small. It's looking at your bills and seeing, where do you think you can make an impact? Where do you think you can create change? And it's that feeling of small successes. It's that little endorphin rush that you need to keep you going on this journey. So if you set small targets, then you're going to keep getting that. But if you set them too high, then it's just going to be frustrating. So that's something that comes up. What should our targets be? And like you're saying, how do I get started? How do I even start thinking about this? Those are probably the two most common ones. We already touched on that with using the different awards and certifications that are out there.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So any last thoughts from you, Elizabeth? This has been a really fun and interesting and valuable conversation. And I want to make sure our viewers and our listeners know exactly how they can contact you and how they can begin to really educate themselves on this important topic.
I think the biggest thing is talk about this and pay attention to how people react, mostly your teams. Talk about, I heard this woman speak about sustainability, and pay attention, because some people are going to light up because you'll notice they care about this and they want this to be part of their organization. They've just never been given permission to make it a priority. And it's a hard place to say, hey boss, do you think we could start recycling? It's a strange conversation to have with leadership. So I think just talking about this and paying attention to how people react could give you the perfect segue into, hey, do you want to lead a sustainability team for the organization? Would that be something that you'd be interested in? And then kind of see where that goes. But yes, I would love to continue this conversation. So what would be the best way to get, should I put my email address in the comments?
Yeah, you can just say it out loud right now. We did just put it on the screen for folks to link into, but if you're not sitting in front of a computer, Elizabeth Shanley at the fehliggroup.com. So why don't you spell it out for us?
Elizabeth Shanley with a Z, ELIZABETH SHAN as in Nancy, LEY, at fehliggroup.com, FEHLIGGROUP.com.
Fantastic. So Elizabeth, thank you so much. We hope you can come back and chat with us some more in the coming months and tell us, the impact that you're having locally and all of the wonderful customers and small businesses that you are working with now to begin to build up this process of a greener planet, a healthier planet, and our own employees being more invested in the work that each of us is doing. So thank you again for your time, and we will see you very soon.
Thank you, Laurie. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.
Bye.